First thing you're going to need is some sort of platform. I have already taken into account the type of pose it is. It's a reclining pose and it's going to be throughout this length. She's going to be on a platform, so we have to figure out a way to build it up just a little bit more, because the figure hopefully is going to be about this big, full of water-based clay. I use water-based clay. The reason I'm going to be doing is that female figures, male figures don't sell very well, so I'm just going to make one copy of this, and it's going to be a fairly large one. So this is like 2 feet in length. I was thinking about making it bigger, but the great thing about water-based clay is that you can fire it, so I don't have to go through a mold making process. With the oil-based stuff, you always have to have an additional step of making the mold. This one, we're going to fire it straight up. And the thing is, with water-based clay and reclining poses, it's a lot easier because gravity doesn't push it down as much. We have our platform, and this is a sculpture stand that I have. It's a pretty nice one. I don't think I've ever shown you guys this, but it's got like my tools over here. I never use this. I really need to remove it. And it does have a crank, so I can move it up and down. The reason I'm doing this is just so I can build a base and still have a little bit of a platform for the sculpture. So I have this here. I'm going to tape it up. And the good thing about using cardboard and this sort of stuff is that when you go to fire it, you could actually burn any residue off. But I am going to be removing it. Actually, I think I'm going to be doing... I'm going to cut it in half as well. Will be good enough for holding the clay. And then we'll build it out to here as well. Let's put it down so we can see. It doesn't really matter if it's level, because the whole point of this is that it's going to be burning up in the kiln anyway, so we don't need it. This piece of wood, we're just going to put this on here. I actually should have put more in the middle, but that's fine. I'll probably figure out where the model's going to be most of the time. This is the clay we're going to be using. It is water-based clay. It's very different from the last sculpture that I did, which was with this JMAC clay. One of the things you're going to be needing is this wire tool, and we're going to be scraping the clay off and then putting it in sheets here. That way we build this up really fast. This is a new bag of clay. And it comes in 25 pounds per bag. And water-based clay is great. A lot of people on YouTube don't really like water-based clay, but it's one of the more versatile mediums you could use. There's downsides to water-based clay. First, you have to keep it moist all the time when you're working with the sculpture. And it gets your house dirtier. If you are like me and you have a studio in the house, you can kind of track dirt all over. So be careful. What I do is I use sandals when I'm working in my studio, then when I step out, I remove them. That way I limit the amount of dirt going to the other parts of the house. So one of the things we're going to be doing is cutting about 1 inch off this using that wire tool. It helps to have a fresh bag of clay. So that's one right here. That clay, and we got to figure out where we're going to start. Maybe we'll start on the side. This is another super good tool to have. You can make very easy cuts on the clay. And now you can see that's a paint scraper tool. Now we're just going to go around the side here. Make sure that you push these clay pieces really firmly next to each other. That way they adhere. Because what happens if you don't push water-based clay really well together, when you are firing it, it tends to break. It will develop cracks. So on this sort of clay, you have to be much better at pushing things together. And you might have to get more clay. And I don't even know if stores are open, so this is a miscalculation by my part. Let's put this one maybe up here. And look at that. Kind of comes together pretty well. Actually, this one, I don't even need to have it this thick, but what I can do is I can push it around. This will require a lot of clay if you were going to use oil-based clay, and it would be very expensive very fast because it's a very large amount of clay that you need. So let's go ahead and just cut this here. The clay is still wet. It's very easy to. So make sure that all of this you join together. You can put this on top. And I'm going to double it like this. We overlap this, kind of push it down. This is very important to push it down. There we go. Let's make a cut here. We're almost done with this bag of clay, so that's 25 pounds right there. Let's cut that. It helps to have some good scraping tools. This is pretty good, and we can scrape away a lot of this because we don't want this to be super heavy. That's why we put the styrofoam or the cardboard. If we were to make this solid, you can see how heavy this thing would be right away. And at the end of the day, since this is going to be fired in a kiln, it doesn't really matter because we're going to have to hollow it out anyway. So at this point, I'm adding all the excess clay to the top. Because you see how thick this is? I'm going to actually scrape a lot of it until here. It's getting a little bit too thick, so I'm just going to take a little bit because we want to use it for other places. That's one problem with the coronavirus is that all the stores are closed. So I would have to figure out a way to get clay. The good thing about water-based clay is that you can get it directly in your backyard by digging a pit and scooping it out, but it takes some time to sort it out, and it takes just too long, but this clay is really nice to use. Water-based clay is great to really push it down because you need a lot of power to do this. Sculpture is not like painting. You know, you could be kind of like a small, weak person and do painting, but in sculpture, especially if you do like large sculptures, then you're going to need to do some lifting. This is not what I like to start out with because it's disgusting looking. If you get one of these tools, it's a piece of aluminum with some serrated edges. You can just drag it along the edges like this, and it scrapes a lot and it adds this texture. It's not about the texture that I like, it's the fact that I can push it down and kind of level it out and remove a little bit along with it. So do this for the base, and then once it's got all of that, use the backside and kind of straighten it out. Our base almost done. You can see it's not perfect, but at this point we can really just work a little bit of clay here and there, and just build it up. The white of the board, I'm actually going to extend it out a little bit. So it's not going to be as big, because then it looks like the model is like a little bit too high up. It actually creates stronger sculptures. At this point, we're not worried about any geometry. We're just focused on perfecting a good base. This thing's pretty massive. I don't know. It's about 2 feet. So the base, as you can see, look at my hands. We're going to have the model from here to here. Her feet are going to be dangling off the base, which will be a nice little touch. So before I start adding the figure, and see if there's any bubbles. Sometimes when you're scraping, you hear like a pop, and that's what you want. You want to pop all of those potential bubbles that have developed, because those bubbles, they create pockets of air. So if there's like a piece of clay like this, and you somehow don't join it, when you like pop it, the air escapes, but usually when that happens when you're firing it, is that it explodes, and you don't want that. So this sort of sculpture requires a lot of dedication, and if you build a big one, it's a lot harder. But a reclining pose is easy. You know, it's probably one of the easier ones you can do, but it adds complexity when it comes to anatomy, especially with a female model.